Before history was written, before gods were given names, humanity watched the sun die each night, and rise again by morning. From that eternal cycle was born a legend older than empires, the phoenix. A firebird that does not flee death, but walks willingly into flame, only to rise anew from its own ashes. Worshipped in ancient Egypt as the Bennu and Reborn in Greek myth, the phoenix became the ultimate symbol of immortality, renewal, and cosmic order. Today, we uncover the ancient truth behind the immortal Firebird, and why its legend refuses to die. Thank you for watching, and welcome to the story of eternal rebirth. When fire learned to remember. Long before humans recorded history, before empires rose and fell, there was fire. Not the fire that warms a hearth or cooks a meal, but cosmic fire, a force that danced across the sky and descended upon the earth as lightning, volcanic flames, or the ever-rising sun. It was the fire of creation, capable of both destruction and renewal. And from this fire, ancient, eternal, and sacred, emerged the earliest stories of a creature that would become humanity's symbol of immortality, the phoenix. The phoenix is more than a bird. It is a paradox, living yet eternal, fragile yet indestructible, mortal yet immortal. It is fire-given memory, a flame that not only consumes but remembers itself. In this first chapter, we trace the origins of this myth, exploring how fire became a witness to time and how the phoenix came to embody humanity's deepest yearning, the ability to rise again, no matter how devastating the fall. The dawn of fire and symbolism. For early humans, fire was a miracle. It was warmth in the freezing cold, light in the suffocating darkness, and protection against predators. But fire was also mysterious. Unlike other natural forces, fire moved unpredictably. It devoured wood, leaves, and even homes, yet it also purified, transformed, and renewed. To watch something burn, then see it give rise to ash, and eventually life in some form, was to witness a natural resurrection. It is no coincidence that fire became the first symbol of immortality. In many cultures, flames were associated with the soul, the divine spark, or eternal life. The phoenix is the embodiment of this symbolism, fire that learned to remember, that could die yet rise again, and that held the memory of all that came before. Egypt, birthplace of the Bennu. The earliest detailed accounts of the phoenix come from ancient Egypt, where it was called the Bennu bird. The Bennu was more than a mythical creature, it was a cosmic witness. According to Egyptian belief, the Bennu was connected to the sun god Ra and the creation god Atum. It perched on the Ben, the primordial mound that rose from the chaotic waters of creation, a symbol of new beginnings. Unlike the fiery phoenix we often imagine today, the Bennu was not necessarily consumed in flames. Its brilliance was solar, its essence luminous. It sang its cry at dawn, marking the birth of the day and the passage of time. The Egyptians associated its long life with the cyclical nature of the sun, the Nile, and the cosmos itself. It was a creature of order emerging from chaos, of life arising from death. The Bennu also carried funerary significance. Egyptians saw in it the process of resurrection, foreshadowing their beliefs in the afterlife and the journey of the soul. Just as the bird returned day after day with the sun, so too could the soul journey safely through death and renewal. The Bennu was not only immortal, it was a teacher of immortality, fire, memory, and renewal. What makes the phoenix extraordinary is the idea that fire can remember. Fire consumes, yes, but it also leaves behind something sacred, ash. This ash is not mere waste, it is potential. In every myth, the phoenix dies in a blaze and rises from the remnants, reborn with all the knowledge and strength of its previous life. This is why it has fascinated humans for millennia. It does not cheat death, it honors it. The concept is simple yet profound, life is cyclical, and memory is essential for transformation. By remembering its past lives, the phoenix preserves not only its own essence but the continuity of time, of history, of life itself. It is a cosmic record keeper. The fire is both destroyer and archivist, consuming the old while ensuring that nothing of value is lost. From Egypt to the Mediterranean. The Bennu did not remain a solely Egyptian symbol. Through trade, conquest, and cultural exchange, its legend traveled to Greece, where it was transformed into the phoenix known to classical writers. Herodotus, the father of history, wrote of a bird in Arabia that lived 500 years, built its own funeral pyre, and was reborn from the flames. Greek thinkers, poets, and historians were fascinated by this idea, a creature that dies in fire, yet is renewed, alone, without mate or peer, embodying perfect solitude and cosmic order. The Greek phoenix was more solitary than its Egyptian counterpart, yet it retained the symbolism of the sun, the cycle of life, and the immortal essence. Where the Egyptians saw a creature tied to divine cycles and the afterlife, the Greeks saw a wonder of nature, a marvel that symbolized hope, endurance, and spiritual renewal. Why the phoenix endures? The phoenix resonates across cultures because it embodies something universal, the need to believe in life after destruction. Humans are creatures of endings, empires collapse, cities burn, and lives are lost. The phoenix, in its eternal cycle of death and rebirth, promises that fire does not end life, it transforms it. It reminds us that every ending carries the seed of a beginning, every collapse hides the potential for resurrection. Its survival in myth is not just about its fire, it is about humanity's ability to endure. Unlike dragons, vampires, or other legendary predators, the phoenix does not instill fear, it instills hope. Its flames are both destructive and nurturing, a paradox we intuitively understand. The first spark of immortality. When fire first learned to remember, humanity learned to hope. The phoenix, born from cosmic flames, captured the imagination of civilizations for thousands of years because it embodied both destruction and continuity. It teaches that mortality is not an end, that life is a series of transformations, and that memory, whether in ash, story, or spirit, is eternal. As we continue to explore the phoenix in the following chapters, we will see how it traveled across cultures, shaped beliefs about immortality, influenced religion and philosophy, and became a symbol that refuses to die. But it all begins here, with fire that learned to remember, and a bird that defied death to become eternal. The Bennu bird of ancient Egypt. Long before the Greeks would call it the phoenix, long before the firebird became a symbol of resurrection across cultures, the bird first appeared along the fertile banks of the Nile. This was no ordinary bird, no creature of flesh and feather as we know it today. This was the Bennu, a sacred avian of ancient Egyptian mythology, a creature so intertwined with the cosmos that its presence bridged the worlds of gods, creation, and humanity. The Bennu bird is often depicted as a heron-like creature, tall and elegant, with long legs and a slender neck, crowned with a plume of feathers that shimmered in gold and blue. Sometimes, scribes represented it with a two-tone plumage, the colors of the dawn and dusk, as if the bird itself carried the first light of creation on its wings. In Egyptian temples and tombs, the Bennu was more than an image, it was a cosmic symbol, a living hieroglyph that conveyed profound truths about life, death, and rebirth. Cosmic origins, the Bennu and creation. To understand the Bennu, one must first understand Egyptian cosmology. In the beginning, according to the Heliopolitan creation myth, there was only none, the infinite primordial waters of chaos. From these waters arose the primordial mound, the Ben, the first solid ground upon which life could grow. Upon this sacred mound perched the Bennu, as if marking the dawn of existence itself. The Bennu was associated with the sun god Ra, who carried the sun across the sky each day. But unlike Ra, who traveled in the solar bark and governed light and time, the Bennu was both observer and participant in creation. Its cry was said to echo across the cosmos, signaling the beginning of new cycles. In this sense, the Bennu was not just a bird, but a cosmic timer, a creature whose presence measured the rhythm of existence itself. The connection to Osiris and resurrection. Beyond creation, the Bennu's symbolism extended into death and rebirth, particularly in its association with Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Egyptians understood death not as an ending, but as a transformation, a necessary phase in the eternal cycle of life. The Bennu, perched upon the sacred Ben stone, became a living metaphor for this belief. Just as the bird was reborn, so too could the soul rise again after death. Some texts describe the Bennu as self-generating, emerging from nothing, much like the soul. This idea reinforced the Egyptian notion of eternal life. Pharaohs and high priests often included depictions of the Bennu in tombs, believing that by invoking the bird's presence, they could mirror its immortality and secure their place in the cycles of rebirth. Sacred fires and the Bennu's nest. While later Greek accounts would emphasize the phoenix's death by flames, the Egyptian Bennu was not inherently a bird of fire in the destructive sense. Its fire was symbolic, a radiance of solar energy, the light that transformed chaos into order. Some depictions hint at a nest built not of twigs, but of sacred reeds and incense, materials associated with purification. When the Bennu died, it was not in agony, but in a ritual of transformation, much like the rituals performed in temples to honor the gods. The act of renewal was central. Egyptians believed that when the Bennu's cycle ended, it returned to the primordial waters, only to emerge again. This continuous cycle mirrored the rising and setting of the sun, the flooding of the Nile, and the eternal flow of life and time. In this way, the Bennu was not just a myth, It was a living allegory for the natural and cosmic order. Bennu and the calendar. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Bennu was its connection to time. Egyptian scholars noted that the bird's lifespan coincided with significant calendrical cycles, though exact numbers varied across sources. Some described it as living 500 years, others 1,461 years, aligning intriguingly with solar years and the cycles of Sirius, which were central to Egyptian agriculture and religious observances. By observing the Bennu, Egyptians could conceptualize time as a series of renewals, rather than a linear march toward death. Each rebirth of the bird reminded them that life, like the Nile's floodwaters, was cyclical. In this sense, the Bennu served as both a mythical guide and a philosophical teacher, showing that order could emerge from chaos and that endings were merely beginnings in disguise. Symbols carried by the Bennu. The Bennu bird carried multiple layers of symbolism. Its long beak and heron-like form signified elegance, vision, and perspective, qualities associated with divine insight. Its association with gold and solar imagery reinforced its role as a bringer of light and life. Some texts even connected the Bennu to alchemy, long before alchemy became a formal practice, by suggesting that transformation through fire or energy was a necessary step toward perfection. The bird's solitude was also significant. There was only one Bennu at a time, embodying uniqueness, singularity, and divine exception. In contrast to swarming, mortal creatures, the Bennu was solitary, emphasizing that certain truths, cosmic truths, exist beyond human numbers or replication. The Bennu's legacy. Although the Greeks would later reimagine the phoenix, the Egyptian Bennu remained the archetype. Its myths informed countless stories of resurrection, divine intervention, and cosmic cycles. Through the Bennu, Egyptians expressed some of their most profound ideas about life, death, and eternity. The bird taught that renewal is natural, divine, and inevitable, a principle that transcended cultures, surviving long after the fall of Egypt's dynasties. Modern scholars see the Bennu as more than a myth. Archaeologists and Egyptologists have traced its images in temples, papyri, and tombs, noting its central role in Heliopolitan theology. The bird was both historical artifact and living idea, linking humans to the divine rhythm of the cosmos. The eternal Egyptian Firebird. In the story of the Bennu, we see the origin of one of the world's most enduring symbols. Here was a bird that did not fear death, that embraced transformation, and that existed in harmony with both time and the divine. Unlike any ordinary creature, the Bennu was a teacher, a guardian, and a cosmic witness. Long before Greece added its poetic flair, the Bennu already embodied the themes that would make the phoenix legendary: immortality, rebirth, and the triumph of life over chaos. By understanding the Bennu, we glimpse the profound ways ancient Egyptians saw their world, not as a linear story of beginnings and endings, but as an eternal cycle of light, life, and renewal. The Bennu, perched eternally upon the primordial mound, remains a reminder that from chaos, life rises again, brighter than before. Its legend is not just ancient history, it is a story that resonates in every human heart, in every culture, and in every myth of the Firebird that rises from its own ashes. Fire without destruction. Fire has always been one of humanity's most ambivalent symbols. It warms and it destroys. It cooks and it consumes. It illuminates yet blinds. In many myths, fire is dangerous, a force of chaos that mortals must fear. Yet in the story of the Phoenix, fire is not merely a weapon, it is sacred, transformative, and paradoxically gentle in its destruction. To understand this, we must journey back to ancient Egypt, where the earliest stories of the Phoenix, known as the Bennu, reveal a strikingly different conception of fire, one that celebrated renewal instead of devastation. The Egyptians were a people obsessed with order. Their civilization, built along the predictable cycle of the Nile, revolved around Ma'at, the principle of balance, truth, and cosmic order. The natural world was a reflection of this order, and nothing was left to chance, not even death. Within this worldview, the Bennu bird emerged as a living embodiment of continuity. It perched upon the Ben stone, the primordial mound that rose from the chaotic waters of Nun at the dawn of creation. Its feathers glimmered like the first rays of the sun. Its song echoed across the desert as a herald of life itself. Here, fire took on a symbolic meaning far beyond mere consumption. The Bennu was associated with the sun god Ra, who himself was reborn each morning after descending into the underworld at night. Just as Ra's journey symbolized the eternal cycle of life and death, the Bennu's fiery aura represented purification and transformation. The Egyptians believed that fire could cleanse, not just destroy, it could prepare a being for renewal rather than annihilation. In this sense, the Bennu's flames were sacred, an instrument of divine order rather than chaos. Interestingly, many early depictions of the Bennu do not show it literally engulfed in flames. Instead, the fire was metaphorical, a radiant aura that marked its divine nature. Its brilliance reflected the sunlight, and its song resonated like a living flame, stirring life wherever it touched. Fire, therefore, was not the end, it was a reminder of continuity. Death was not a punishment or an accident but a necessary stage in an eternal cycle. The symbolic power of fire extended beyond cosmic order to the very human concept of time. Ancient Egyptian calendars were closely tied to the Nile cycles, which determined the rhythm of planting and harvesting. The Bennu's lifespan was said to coincide with these cosmic patterns. Some myths suggest the bird lived 500 years, or even 1,461 years, reflecting cycles of the sun, the moon, and human lifespans. By embracing fire, the Bennu connected itself to the eternal rhythms of the cosmos. Its destruction was not fearsome but purposeful, a shedding of the old to welcome the new. When the time came for the Bennu to renew itself, it built a nest of aromatic resins, myrrh, and incense, combining natural materials imbued with spiritual significance. When this nest was ignited, it burned brightly, yet the fire was not malevolent. It purified the bird's body, leaving nothing corrupt or stagnant behind. From the ashes, a new Bennu emerged, reborn, fresh, and fully formed. In this act, fire functioned as a sacred agent of renewal, a cleansing force that allowed life to continue rather than terminate. This Egyptian conception of fire contrasts sharply with later Greek interpretations of the phoenix. Greek writers such as Herodotus and Pliny the Elder often emphasized the spectacle, a bird consumed by flames, only to rise again from its own ashes. To the Greeks, the fire was dramatic, a visually striking symbol of immortality and rarity. Yet even in this version, fire retained its dual role. It was destructive yet necessary. Without the flames, the phoenix could not be reborn. The Greeks preserved the Egyptian insight that fire did not signify mere destruction, it was an essential step in transformation. Fire without destruction became a central motif not only in myth but also in religious and philosophical symbolism. The phoenix's flames inspired later thinkers to contemplate the nature of life, death, and rebirth. To watch the phoenix ignite its nest was to witness a sacred ritual of renewal. Death was not an end to be feared but a transition, an alchemical process in which the essence of life is preserved, purified, and restored. By embracing fire, the phoenix demonstrated that destruction could be an act of creation, a principle echoed in countless philosophical and spiritual traditions across cultures. This theme resonates in practical human experience as well. Think of the seasonal cycles, where plants die in winter only to bloom in spring. Consider the burning of forests in nature, which clears old growth to make room for new life. The phoenix, in its ethereal and symbolic fire, reflects these natural truths. Fire without destruction is, paradoxically, the essence of survival and continuity. It teaches that endings are often beginnings in disguise, and that purification, though sometimes painful, is a necessary part of growth. Moreover, the idea of fire without destruction underscores a psychological truth. The phoenix becomes a mirror of human resilience. Just as the bird voluntarily enters flames to emerge anew, humans face crises, loss, and failure, metaphorical fires that test our endurance. The phoenix does not escape the flames, it transcends them, emerging stronger, wiser, and more radiant. Here, mythology crosses into timeless life lessons. Transformation is only possible through the courage to confront the fires that threaten us. Finally, the Bennu and its fire symbolize hope in the face of mortality. While other mythical birds may be fierce or predatory, the phoenix is uniquely gentle in its destruction. Its flames are not punitive, they are liberating. In every cycle of death and rebirth, the phoenix reminds humanity that endings can be sacred, that destruction can be creative, and that fire, when embraced rather than feared, becomes a source of light, guidance, and renewal. In the story of the phoenix, fire is not the enemy of life, it is life itself, distilled, illuminated, and eternal. From Egypt to Greece, this myth teaches that flames do not merely consume, they purify. They remind us that even in the face of death, renewal is always possible, and that the essence of life, like the phoenix, can rise from ashes brighter than before. The long life of the eternal bird. The phoenix is no ordinary bird. Its majesty is not just measured by its golden red feathers or its legendary resurrection, it is measured by the astonishing longevity that defines its existence. Ancient sources claim that the phoenix lived for hundreds, even over 1,000 years, and every culture that chronicled its life was struck by the implications of such extraordinary age. To live so long was not merely survival, it was a direct connection to the cosmic order itself, a witness to centuries of human history, natural phenomena, and divine cycles. In Egyptian mythology, the phoenix was intimately tied to the cycles of the sun. Known as the Bennu, it was considered a sacred bird connected to the god Ra, the ruler of the sky, and to Osiris, the god of resurrection and the afterlife. The Egyptians imagined the Bennu living on the primordial mound that rose from the chaotic waters of creation, and from this vantage point, it observed the world for centuries. The bird's life was measured not in decades, as with humans, but in the rhythms of time itself. Some texts suggest a lifespan of 500 years, a number significant in Egyptian numerology, representing completeness and cosmic balance. Others, perhaps more poetic or symbolic, extend this to 1,000 or 1,461 years, aligning with larger celestial and calendrical cycles. Every century it lived, every era it survived, the phoenix became a living chronicle, a guardian of knowledge and witness to the ebb and flow of civilizations. In Greek mythology, the phoenix was no less remarkable. Classical authors such as Herodotus described the bird as inhabiting distant, sun-scorched lands, often associated with Arabia or Ethiopia. Here, the phoenix lived in solitude, away from human interference, enduring for centuries as the only one of its kind. This prolonged life was essential, for the phoenix was not meant to multiply or populate the world, it was meant to embody eternity. Its uniqueness amplified the mystery surrounding it, a bird that existed far longer than any human, untouched by natural predators or disease, untouched by time itself. Yet how did the ancients imagine such a long life? The phoenix's longevity was intertwined with ritual and symbolism. When it reached the end of its life, the bird did not simply die. It engaged in a carefully orchestrated process that demonstrated a profound understanding of death as transformation rather than cessation. The phoenix built a nest of fragrant woods, herbs, and resin, materials not chosen at random, but for their sacred properties. Myrrh, frankincense, and aromatic resins were not just fuel, they were offerings, echoing Egyptian funerary traditions and symbolizing purification. In a final act of conscious participation, the phoenix would ignite the nest. Flames consumed its body, yet the fire did not destroy its essence. From the ashes arose a new phoenix, perfectly renewed and unbroken, ready to live another long life spanning centuries. This cycle of life, death, and rebirth highlights the bird's extraordinary endurance. To live so long, and then die voluntarily, positioned the phoenix as a teacher of patience and the inevitability of transformation. Unlike humans, who age and decay, the phoenix's life was cyclical, each rebirth resetting its age. In essence, the phoenix could be seen as immortal in spirit, even if each individual body was transient. This understanding influenced human imagination profoundly. Philosophers and poets drew inspiration from the idea that life is not a straight line but a repeating cycle, and that longevity was not merely biological but spiritual. The phoenix's long life also served practical storytelling purposes. By existing for centuries, the bird could bridge eras of myth and human history. It could witness the rise and fall of kings, the birth of cities, and the shifting of empires. In Egyptian terms, it was present at the very creation of the world. Greek writers used its lifespan to stress its divine nature, a creature so removed from human temporality that it could only be touched by gods or the sun itself. This extended existence reinforced the phoenix as a symbol of continuity, a constant in a world defined by impermanence. Interestingly, the phoenix's longevity was not always measured in exact numbers. Often, its age was described poetically, emphasizing magnitude rather than precision. Herodotus, for instance, spoke of the bird living for centuries, hinting at a time scale beyond ordinary comprehension. This vagueness was intentional. The phoenix's life was meant to inspire awe, to be beyond human reckoning, and to challenge the imagination. When ancients described its lifespan, they were not merely recording a fact, they were inviting reflection on eternity itself. The longevity of the phoenix also connects deeply with the human fascination with immortality. Across cultures, people have dreamed of extending life, avoiding death, or achieving spiritual continuity. The phoenix embodies these dreams, serving as a metaphor for hope, endurance, and resilience. Its centuries-long life demonstrates that time is not a constraint for the eternal spirit. It shows that life can be prolonged not through avoidance, but through repetition, renewal, and conscious transformation. Each rebirth is an opportunity to exist fully again, free from the limitations of prior life, yet enriched by the memory of what came before. Finally, the phoenix's long life reminds us that it is more than a bird, it is a cosmic participant. By living centuries, witnessing creation and the cycles of nature, the phoenix connects human experience with universal rhythms. Its longevity is not merely biological but symbolic, teaching that patience, endurance, and renewal are timeless virtues. Whether perched upon the Egyptian Benben stone or soaring through Greek deserts, the phoenix embodies the intersection of time, divinity, and hope, a creature whose life is a story written across centuries, a story that refuses to be forgotten. Extraordinary lifespan, hundreds to over 1,000 years, made it more than a bird, it was a cosmic witness and a symbol of immortality. Its life, intertwined with the cycles of the sun, sacred rituals, and divine observation, taught humanity that death is not final and that renewal is always possible. By living so long and embracing its own death, the phoenix became a timeless teacher of hope, resilience, and the eternal rhythm of life. Death by flame, birth by ash. Among the most striking aspects of the phoenix myth is its intimate relationship with fire. Unlike other legendary creatures that dwell in shadow or wilderness, the phoenix thrives in flame. Yet the fire it embraces is not an instrument of malice, it is a crucible of transformation. This is the moment where life, death, and renewal converge, revealing why the phoenix has endured in human imagination for millennia. In Egyptian mythology, the Bennu bird's association with the sun was fundamental. Its flames were not destructive in the way a wildfire consumes a forest. Instead, they were purifying, sacred, and emblematic of the eternal cycles of creation. Ancient Egyptians believed the phoenix lived for hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 years, patiently witnessing the rise and fall of civilizations and the slow, unyielding march of time. When its time came, the phoenix would construct its nest of aromatic woods and resins, myrrh, frankincense, and other precious substances, which carried both symbolic and ritual significance. These materials were not meant merely to fuel a blaze, they were offerings, as though the bird itself participated in a funerary rite orchestrated by the laws of the cosmos. The act of self-immolation was deliberate, a conscious surrender to the inevitability of death. Some Egyptian texts suggest that the Bennu would sing a final, haunting cry before leaping into the flames, its notes echoing like the first words of creation. Here, the fire represented solar energy, the divine spark that could transmute mortality into immortality. The ashes left behind were not waste but the soil from which new life would spring. In this way, death by flame was never final, it was a necessary step toward rebirth. When the myth traveled to Greece, it transformed. Greek writers such as Herodotus, Pliny the Elder, and Ovid were fascinated by the phoenix's cycle of death and renewal, emphasizing its solitary courage and beauty. The Greek phoenix was often depicted as a bird of gold, crimson, and violet feathers, glowing as though lit from within by fire itself. As the centuries passed, the story took on a more poetic, moralistic tone. The phoenix did not simply survive the fire, it embraced destruction as the path to renewal. Its death was both an ending and a declaration of the eternal. The ashes from which it rose symbolized memory, continuity, and the persistence of life itself. The mechanics of the phoenix's death by fire are as intriguing as their symbolism. According to the legends, the bird would first gather the finest aromatic substances to form a nest or pyre. It would then enter the nest, singing a final song that reflected the knowledge and experiences accumulated over its centuries-long life. This song, described in Greek sources as both mournful and triumphant, was said to carry a melody so profound that even the gods paused to listen. Then, with deliberate calm, the phoenix ignited the nest, succumbing to the flames without resistance. Flames consumed its body, reducing feathers, bone, and song to ash, yet in the heat of this destruction, a miracle occurred. From the ashes arose a new phoenix, young yet carrying the essence of its predecessor. The symbolism is multi-layered. First, it represents the inescapable cycle of life and death, a concept central to Egyptian religion and later Greek philosophy. Second, it embodies resilience, showing that true life is not avoidance of destruction but mastery over it. Third, it teaches that memory and legacy survive beyond the physical self. The ashes, once cold and lifeless, become the cradle of new existence, a physical reminder that continuity is possible even after apparent annihilation. In many ways, the phoenix's death and rebirth ritual mirrors human spiritual and cultural practices. Ancient Egyptians often mummified the dead and placed them in carefully prepared tombs, surrounded by offerings and symbols meant to aid in the soul's rebirth. Likewise, the Greeks celebrated rituals of purification and renewal, including the lighting of sacred fires during festivals like the Eleusinian Mysteries. The phoenix, in its solitary and self-directed rite, embodies these human concerns and spiritual truths, distilled into a single, living narrative. Yet the phoenix is not simply a metaphor for ritual, it is also a story of agency in the face of death. Unlike humans or most animals, it chooses the moment of its passing. It does not die in fear or by accident. The bird's self-immolation is an assertion of control, a conscious participation in the natural order. Death is not something that happens to the phoenix, it is something the phoenix commands. This distinction is profound. The act of dying becomes an act of creation, and the ashes are more than remnants, they are seedlings of eternity. Greek interpretations further emphasize this point. In some accounts, the phoenix rises immediately from the ashes, fully formed and bearing the wisdom of its previous life. Other versions describe it as a fledgling, tiny and vulnerable, needing time to grow into the magnificent creature it once was. Both interpretations carry meaning. The first highlights continuity, the second renewal and potential. In either case, the myth insists that death is never final, only transitional. The cycle of death by flame and rebirth has fascinated scholars, artists, and writers for centuries. Renaissance painters depicted the phoenix rising from a blazing nest, a visual testament to the enduring appeal of this story. Poets across cultures have used the phoenix to symbolize resilience in the human spirit, the ability to recover from personal catastrophe, and the hope that endings can transform into beginnings. Even today, the phoenix resonates because it speaks to a universal truth: destruction is not the enemy of life, but often its necessary companion. Fires, literal or metaphorical, can purify, illuminate, and prepare the ground for something greater. In embracing fire, the phoenix models a profound courage and an understanding of the impermanence of physical forms. Its ashes are not a symbol of loss, but a reminder that life, memory, and spirit endure when nurtured with care and intention. Thus, the phoenix's story teaches humanity an enduring lesson: to face endings with courage, to allow transformation through trials, and to trust in the power of renewal. From the sacred Nile to the deserts of Arabia, from Greek temples to modern literature, the narrative of the Firebird continues to captivate, inspire, and remind us that life is cyclical, and hope is immortal. In the end, the phoenix's death by flame is not tragedy, it is triumph. Its rebirth from ash is not miracle alone, it is cosmic justice, poetic inevitability, and eternal promise. It assures us that even in destruction, something precious is preserved, waiting for the moment to rise anew, brighter and stronger than before. Greece discovers the phoenix. Long before the Greeks immortalized it in literature, the phoenix was already an ancient symbol in the deserts of Egypt. But it was the Greek world, with its appetite for the exotic and the mystical, that transformed the phoenix from a divine, solar creature into a symbol of beauty, rarity, and eternal rebirth. Trade, conquest, and curiosity carried Egyptian ideas across the Mediterranean, and Greek writers, historians, poets, and philosophers alike were fascinated by the tales of a solitary bird that could outlive empires, fire, and even death itself. The earliest Greek accounts, though brief, reveal a mixture of admiration and skepticism. Herodotus, often called the father of history, wrote of a bird that lived in Arabia, a very strange bird, golden in hue, the color of the sun, and solitary in nature. He noted the fantastical claim that this bird would, at the end of its life, build a nest of aromatic resins, ignite it, and rise again from the ashes. Herodotus admitted he had never seen it himself, yet he relayed the story because the Egyptians revered it, and Egyptians, in his eyes, were the most ancient of all peoples. In doing so, Herodotus became the first Greek historian to introduce the phoenix to a Greek audience, a symbol bridging two civilizations. Greek writers were struck by aspects of the phoenix that differed from their own familiar mythologies. Whereas most Greek creatures were numerous, living in communities or threatening humankind, the phoenix was singular and solitary. There was only ever one phoenix at a time. Its life spanned centuries, perhaps even a millennium, dwarfing human lifespans and the ages of the gods in their mortal interactions. This made the phoenix a creature beyond ordinary experience, beyond even the epic heroes of Homer. It was, in a sense, the ultimate individual, a solitary testament to endurance and perfection. In translating the Egyptian Bennu into the Greek imagination, authors emphasized its physical beauty. Unlike Egyptian depictions, which were stylized and symbolic, Greek accounts painted the phoenix in vivid, almost tangible detail: feathers of red, gold, and purple, a gleam like the morning sun reflecting off water, and eyes that conveyed a deep, almost human intelligence. The phoenix was no longer just a divine symbol, it was a creature of wonder, awe, and inspiration. Its aesthetic appeal alone elevated it above ordinary birds and embedded it firmly in the Greek conception of the extraordinary. The phoenix also captured Greek interest because it was not tied to human events in the same way other creatures were. It did not demand sacrifice, raid villages, or guard treasures. Instead, it acted according to its own mysterious rhythms, governed by time and cosmic cycles, not mortal affairs. This detachment lent the phoenix an aura of philosophical profundity. It became a metaphor for enduring truths and eternal laws, a visible symbol of the natural order, life's cycles, and the inevitability of renewal. Greek writers sometimes adapted the phoenix to fit local geography and mythology. While the Egyptians placed it in Heliopolis, the Greeks imagined it in far-off Arabia or Ethiopia, lands considered exotic, distant, and mysterious. The bird became a traveler of deserts, sun-scorched plains, and remote oases, a solitary emissary of the divine whose rare sightings stirred amazement and speculation. By situating it in foreign lands, Greek culture both exoticized the phoenix and underscored its unattainable nature. To see a phoenix was to glimpse something impossible yet undeniably beautiful. Philosophers found in the phoenix a potent symbol for meditation. In an era fascinated with cosmic order, the soul, and immortality, the phoenix's cycle of death and rebirth became a metaphor for the human soul's journey. Some suggested that the phoenix's fiery death symbolized the purging of impurity, while its rebirth represented renewal and enlightenment. In this way, the phoenix served as a bridge between mythology and philosophy, between story and moral contemplation. It was not merely a fantastical creature, it was an ideal, an allegory for human resilience and the immortality of the spirit. Yet, the Greeks were also curious about the phoenix's alleged lifespan. Various accounts suggested it lived between 500 and 1,000 years, or even more. Such extraordinary longevity fascinated natural philosophers, who tried to reconcile myth with observation. Could a creature truly live longer than civilizations? Could it witness the rise and fall of empires, as some legends claimed? For the Greeks, the phoenix became a lens through which to explore time itself, an emblem of endurance far beyond the limits of mortal experience. It was a reminder that, while human lives are fleeting, nature and myth can endure far longer. The phoenix's rebirth from its ashes particularly resonated with Greek culture because it reflected themes central to their own mythology. Just as gods and heroes faced trials, deaths, and transformations, so too did the phoenix. Its story was simpler, yet infinitely more profound. Destruction did not lead to oblivion but to renewal. The Greeks admired the poetic symmetry of fire and ash, death and life, endings and beginnings. In a culture steeped in tragedy, where mortality was a constant shadow, the phoenix was a creature that defied despair and embodied hope. By the Hellenistic period, the phoenix had become a symbol in literature, coinage, and art. Writers like Ovid and Pliny the Elder recorded its story in encyclopedic form, ensuring it would reach audiences far beyond Greece. The phoenix was no longer just Egyptian lore, it was a shared cultural emblem, a universal metaphor for immortality, transformation, and the eternal cycles of life and time. Its image adorned coins, mosaics, and frescoes, often alongside sun motifs, reinforcing its role as a bridge between human understanding and cosmic order. In many ways, the Greek adoption of the phoenix illustrates the broader process of cultural exchange in the ancient world. Egypt, with its monumental temples, sacred animals, and elaborate theology, provided the raw material of myth. Greece, with its curiosity, literary sophistication, and philosophical depth, shaped that material into stories that could be told, retold, and analyzed for generations. The phoenix, as a symbol, thrived precisely because it transcended borders, languages, and cultures, a bird not confined to one desert, one river, or one belief system. Ultimately, Greece did more than simply inherit the phoenix, it reimagined it. From a divine solar messenger perched on a sacred Egyptian stone, the phoenix became a universal emblem of immortality, solitary perfection, and hope against annihilation. Its legend traveled from Heliopolis to Alexandria, from desert sands to marble halls, carrying with it the essence of a creature that lives, dies, and rises again, not once, but forever. For the Greeks, as for the Egyptians, the phoenix was a reminder that life is cyclical, that endings are illusions, and that the spark of existence can always ignite again, brighter than before. A bird without a mate. Among the many marvels of mythology, the phoenix stands apart, not only for its fiery resurrection but for its singular existence. Unlike other creatures, both mortal and divine, the phoenix never seeks companionship. It is always alone, solitary, and whole. In a world where myths teem with pairs, mates, and family lines, the phoenix breaks the pattern. Its story is one of independence, singularity, and perfection. Understanding why this firebird exists without a mate opens a window into ancient ideas of immortality, the soul, and the sacred concept of uniqueness. In ancient Egyptian texts, the phoenix appears as the Bennu bird, a sacred creature associated with the sun god Ra and the cycles of creation. While most animals were described in relation to their offspring or partnerships, the Bennu is almost always solitary. This was no accident. In Egyptian cosmology, the Bennu symbolizes the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. Unlike mortal beings, whose survival depends on lineage, the Bennu's life is self-contained. Its immortality does not rely on propagation, its legacy is continuity, not multiplication. The lack of a mate, in this sense, is deeply symbolic. In Egyptian thought, perfection was a state beyond human needs. To live without a partner was not a limitation, it was a mark of divine completeness. The Bennu bird exists in perfect harmony with the universe, fully aligned with cosmic order. Its cycle of death and resurrection mirrors the sun's journey across the sky and the flooding of the Nile, phenomena that occur regardless of human or animal intervention. The phoenix is a reminder that some forms of life, particularly those symbolic of cosmic truths, are self-sufficient. When the Greeks encountered the phoenix, they adopted the bird into their own mythology, enhancing the idea of solitude. Herodotus, the famous historian of the 5th century BCE, described a magnificent bird living alone in Arabia, golden and red in color, appearing only once every 500 years. Unlike Egyptian descriptions, Greek writers emphasized its singularity as a sign of rarity and divine favor. To the Greeks, the phoenix's solitary existence made it a creature of unparalleled uniqueness. One could not study its habits in flocks or observe mating rituals. Its life was a personal journey of rebirth, a testament to the power of one being. The Greeks also attributed profound philosophical significance to the phoenix's solitude. Philosophers and poets saw in this solitary firebird an allegory for the individual soul, a singular essence capable of renewal without reliance on others. Unlike humans, who form societies, families, and partnerships, the phoenix embodies the notion that the soul can exist independently, enduring, and evolving through time. The firebird's independence teaches that immortality is not merely a continuation of life but a refinement of essence. To be reborn, one does not need to reproduce, one needs to transform. Interestingly, the phoenix's solitude is not a curse or a symbol of loneliness. Ancient storytellers rarely depict it as sad or yearning for companionship. Its isolation is chosen, purposeful, and sacred. The bird's life cycle, construction of a nest, self-immolation, and subsequent rebirth, is a solitary ritual. No other bird participates, no mate provides comfort or guidance. The phoenix alone faces mortality, and the transformation is entirely self-directed. In this way, the firebird becomes a spiritual model. True renewal is achieved through self-awareness and intentional action, not through dependence on others. The symbolic resonance of being without a mate extends into religious and philosophical interpretations as well. Early Christians, for instance, saw in the phoenix an image of Christ, who, though surrounded by disciples, remains singular in divine essence. The firebird's solitary resurrection mirrors the unique nature of the divine act, one that cannot be duplicated or mediated by another. Just as Christ rose from death alone, the phoenix rises from the ashes without aid, embodying the idea that the most profound transformations are often solitary experiences. Even in alchemical and psychological traditions, the phoenix retains this motif of singularity. Medieval alchemists saw the firebird as a symbol of inner transformation, a process that could not be shared or outsourced. One could not borrow the flames of another to achieve rebirth. The alchemical, inner phoenix had to confront its own destruction, endure its own fire, and rise anew from its ashes. This parallels the bird's mythological insistence on living without a mate. Renewal is an individual journey, not a communal one. The phoenix's lack of a mate also highlights the rarity of its existence. In Greek and Roman thought, creatures that are rare are often sacred. Unlike swans or doves, which appear in flocks, the phoenix appears once in centuries, a solitary blaze of gold and scarlet. Its singularity enhances its mystique, making it a symbol of perfection, divinity, and unattainable beauty. The fact that it does not reproduce underscores its transcendence. This bird does not exist for survival in a biological sense, it exists as a living idea, a bridge between mortality and eternity. Yet, the phoenix's solitude is not emptiness. It is full of purpose. Every cycle of death and rebirth carries meaning. The Firebird maintains the cosmic order, renews the solar cycle, and models the transformative power of fire. By living alone, it shows that life's ultimate purpose is not always companionship or reproduction, it is alignment with the rhythms of creation. In this, the phoenix teaches humans a subtle lesson. While relationships and family shape our mortal existence, there is a deeper, singular path of growth, resilience, and renewal that each individual must undertake. In modern interpretations, the motif of a bird without a mate has continued to inspire writers, filmmakers, and artists. The phoenix becomes a metaphor for self-reliance, personal transformation, and the courage to face destruction alone. It reminds us that even in solitude, one can achieve greatness. Like the Firebird, humans can rise from personal trials, reinvent themselves, and emerge stronger, carrying the lessons of past failures into a renewed existence. Ultimately, the phoenix's singular life is a paradox of mythology. It is both isolated and eternal. By choosing solitude, it demonstrates the extraordinary potential of one being to influence time, space, and human imagination. It is a bird without a mate, yet it belongs to the cosmos itself. Its song, cry, and flame belong to no one but itself, and yet resonate with all who witness its legend. The phoenix shows that immortality is not about numbers, partnerships, or lineage. It is about the integrity of existence and the courage to face death alone. Its solitary flight teaches that life's most profound journeys, rebirth, transformation, enlightenment, are deeply personal, requiring no companion but one's own essence. Messenger of the sun god. Among the many marvels of mythology, few creatures are as intimately connected to the sun as the phoenix. From its earliest depiction in ancient Egypt to its later reimagining by the Greeks, the phoenix was never just a bird, it was a living herald of solar power, a winged embodiment of the sun's eternal rise, its fiery feathers reflecting both light and divinity. In this chapter, we explore how the phoenix came to serve as the messenger of the sun god, a symbol that bridged creation, cosmic order, and the eternal rhythms of life. The sun and the Egyptian cosmos. In Egyptian thought, the sun was far more than a source of light or warmth, it was the lifeblood of the cosmos. Ra, the great sun god, sailed across the sky in his celestial boat each day, bringing life and order to a world balanced precariously against the chaos of Nun, the primordial waters. Each morning, Ra's fiery bark emerged from the eastern horizon, conquering the darkness, and each evening, it descended into the underworld, where he battled the serpentine chaos dragon Apep before rising again the next dawn. Within this cosmic rhythm, the Bennu bird, the Egyptian precursor of the phoenix, held a unique role. According to inscriptions in Heliopolis, the Bennu was said to perch upon the Ben stone, the primeval mound that emerged from Nun at creation. From this vantage point, it witnessed the birth of the world and served as a divine intermediary, a bridge between gods and the living. The Bennu was more than a symbol, it was an agent of the sun, marking the passage of time and reflecting the sun's daily journey in miniature. The flight of the messenger. The phoenix's connection to the sun is most dramatically expressed in its flight. Ancient texts describe the phoenix as rising each dawn, its plumage blazing like molten gold, trailing crimson and fiery orange feathers across the sky. To the Egyptians, this flight was not merely ornamental, it was a ritual reenactment of creation itself. Each wingbeat symbolized life affirming itself over death, light conquering darkness, order triumphing over chaos. Greek writers, influenced by Egyptian myths, later described the phoenix's flight in almost hypnotic terms. Herodotus, the father of history, recounts stories from priests in Heliopolis who claimed that the phoenix would emerge from Arabia, carrying the ashes of its predecessor to the altar of the sun in Egypt. Its journey across deserts and skies was a pilgrimage of cosmic significance, a living testament to the sun's eternal path and humanity's fascination with immortality. A voice that transcends time. The phoenix was not silent in its solar duties. Ancient myths describe its cry as a song of both warning and praise, a sound so clear that it echoed across deserts and cities alike. To the Egyptians, the bird's call marked time itself. Some believed that the Bennu's cry was the origin of the first words, a vocalization that mirrored the divine utterances of creation. For the Greeks, the phoenix's voice carried an almost mystical quality, said to soothe hearts and inspire awe in all who heard it. Its song was not merely beautiful, it was a reminder of continuity, a celestial anthem declaring that the sun would rise again, the cycle of life would continue, and the past would never truly be lost. Through sound and motion, the phoenix became the perfect messenger, a living herald of light, renewal, and divine order. Symbolism in sun worship. The role of the phoenix as a sun messenger extended beyond physical flight and song. It also became a symbol of human aspiration and spiritual philosophy. In Egyptian iconography, the bird was often depicted with a radiant halo or in positions that echoed the sun's path. Its cyclical death and rebirth were metaphors for the sun's nightly descent into darkness and morning resurgence. In Greek thought, the phoenix represented renewal and immortality, but always through the lens of the sun. Its radiant feathers mirrored Aelio's chariot, its solitary life suggested the sun's singular importance, and its ultimate rebirth symbolized the cyclical nature of time itself. Philosophers interpreted the phoenix's existence as a lesson. Just as the sun returns each day, so too can individuals overcome destruction, sorrow, or endings, emerging renewed and stronger. The phoenix and religious rituals. The phoenix's connection to the sun also played a role in religious rituals and state ceremonies. In Heliopolis, the altar of the sun was considered the bird's sacred destination. By bringing the ashes of its predecessor to this altar, the phoenix enacted a ritual of cosmic continuity, reinforcing the link between the heavens and the earth. Later, Romans adopted the phoenix as a symbol of imperial eternity, linking it to the sun god Sol Invictus. Coins, mosaics, and temple art often depicted the phoenix alongside radiant solar imagery, emphasizing the ruler's alignment with cosmic order and eternal authority. The bird's flight and song became metaphors not only for divine cycles but for political and spiritual legitimacy, demonstrating how the phoenix's role as a sun messenger transcended cultures and epochs. Lessons from the eternal bird. The phoenix's identity as a sun messenger teaches a timeless lesson: life and death, darkness and light, are part of a cycle larger than any individual existence. By delivering the ashes of its former self to the sun, the phoenix demonstrates the importance of memory, ritual, and continuity. Each resurrection is both a personal and cosmic event, a reminder that endings are temporary, and that light inevitably returns after darkness. Even today, the phoenix continues to inspire. Its fiery symbolism appears in literature, art, and popular culture, where it often serves as a metaphor for hope, renewal, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The phoenix teaches that being a messenger, whether of the sun, of knowledge, or of hope, requires courage, endurance, and the willingness to embrace cycles of destruction and renewal. The phoenix is more than a mythological creature, it is the embodiment of the sun's eternal rhythm, a living reminder of creation, continuity, and rebirth. From the deserts of Egypt to the philosophical musings of Greece, the bird's flight, song, and sacrificial rituals made it the ultimate messenger of the sun god. Its legend endures because it touches on something universal: the desire to rise from ashes, to shine against the darkness, and to bear witness to the eternal light. In understanding the phoenix, we come closer to understanding the cycles that govern not only the cosmos but our own lives. The ashes as sacred relics. In the mythology of the phoenix, death is never the end, it is a transformation. Among the most fascinating aspects of the phoenix legend is what happens after its self-immolation, the treatment of its ashes. Across cultures, these remnants were not discarded as mere remains but revered as sacred relics, vessels of divine power, memory, and continuity. In both Egyptian and Greek interpretations, the ashes themselves carried meaning, embodying the cycle of life, death, and rebirth in tangible form. The earliest records of the phoenix in ancient Egypt identify it as the Bennu bird, closely associated with the sun god Ra and, later, with the god of the afterlife, Osiris. The Bennu's burning and rebirth were intimately linked to the sun's daily cycle, which the Egyptians regarded as the ultimate symbol of regeneration. When the Bennu approached the end of its life cycle, sometimes said to last hundreds of years, it constructed a nest of aromatic woods, myrrh, and frankincense, substances highly prized in religious rituals. Once the bird ignited itself, the flames consumed the nest and the Bennu. From the resulting ashes, a new Bennu would rise, continuing the eternal cycle. The Egyptians placed deep spiritual significance on these ashes. In their cosmology, nothing that was sacred was ever truly lost. The ashes were thought to contain the essence of the bird's previous life, a concentrated form of its divine spirit. Placing the ashes on the altar of the sun god was more than ritual, it was an act of reverence, connecting the human world with the eternal cosmic cycle. In this sense, the phoenix's ashes were the ultimate relic, a fragment of immortality that could be preserved, honored, and even consulted as a symbol of divine order. The Greeks inherited and reinterpreted this aspect of the phoenix myth. Greek writers such as Herodotus, Pliny the Elder, and Ovid described the phoenix as traveling to the city of Heliopolis, carrying the ashes of its former self. There, the ashes were deposited at a temple altar dedicated to the sun. Herodotus, in his histories, emphasized the sacred journey of the phoenix with a tone of both awe and skepticism. He described the ashes not merely as remains but as a bridge between generations, a tangible link between past and present. To the Greeks, the phoenix's ashes were less about the ritual of fire and more about symbolic continuity, a reminder that even when something perishes, its essence can endure. Interestingly, the ashes themselves became a subject of fascination for both historians and natural philosophers. Pliny the Elder speculated on their miraculous properties, suggesting that they might have healing powers or protective qualities. Some traditions held that even a small fragment of the phoenix's ashes could bring renewal, fortune, or longevity to those who treated it with reverence. This belief elevated the phoenix beyond the realm of myth into the realm of practical spirituality, where objects associated with divine creatures could influence human life. The ritualistic use of ashes as sacred relics also reflects a broader human tendency to preserve fragments of what is revered. Across cultures, relics, whether bones, ashes, or objects touched by divinity, served as anchors for faith, memory, and identity. The phoenix is a prime example. Its ashes were not simply symbolic, they were treated as carriers of cosmic truth. By preserving them at altars or temples, ancient peoples could participate in the eternal cycle of renewal themselves, metaphorically dying and rising anew through devotion. In a metaphorical sense, the ashes of the phoenix represent memory and transformation. Every rebirth begins with what has been left behind, the ashes of experience. In this way, the myth teaches that nothing is wasted, even destruction produces something sacred and useful. This is reflected in Egyptian funerary practices, where embalming and mummification preserved the body as a vessel of the soul. Similarly, the ashes of the phoenix preserved the spiritual essence of the creature for future generations. The symbolic use of ashes continued into later cultures. In early Christian interpretations, writers like Clement of Rome and Lactantius drew parallels between the phoenix and the resurrection of Christ. Here too, the ashes were emblematic. Death is not annihilation, but a necessary precursor to rebirth. While Christianity did not literally venerate ashes from a firebird, the concept that a trace of the old life carries sacred potential into the new life resonates strongly with the phoenix myth. The ashes became a metaphorical relic, a symbol of hope and renewal rather than a physical object to be worshipped. Even in alchemy and medieval mysticism, the ashes of the phoenix retained significance. Alchemists often used the phoenix as a symbol of nigredo, the first stage of transformation in the magnum opus, where materials are purified through fire. The ashes were understood as the residue of destruction that precedes creation, the material evidence that transformation is real. By studying the ashes, the alchemist could understand the process of change, both materially and spiritually. In this sense, the ashes of the phoenix became not only a relic but also a lesson in the inevitability and necessity of change. The cultural significance of phoenix ashes also highlights the human fascination with immortality. Many myths are concerned with avoiding death. The phoenix's ashes offer an alternative. Death is not to be feared if it is part of a cycle that preserves essence. By elevating ashes to sacred status, humans externalize and ritualize the idea of continuity beyond physical demise. In essence, the phoenix taught that what is valuable never truly disappears, it only transforms. Finally, the ashes as sacred relics carry an enduring message: destruction can be sacred, and endings can be beginnings. They remind us that renewal is possible even after complete loss. The ashes of the phoenix, whether literal in Egyptian temples, symbolic in Greek altars, or metaphorical in Christian and alchemical thought, embody the eternal truth that from what has been consumed, something new and extraordinary will rise. In this chapter of the phoenix's story, we see that its significance extends far beyond its brilliant feathers and flames. The ashes are the true vessel of immortality, a tangible connection to eternity. They are more than remains, they are sacred relics that teach us about continuity, hope, and the transformative power of fire. Every culture that encountered the phoenix recognized that in its ashes lay the secret of eternal life. Nothing is ever truly lost if it leaves behind the spark of essence. The phoenix's ashes endure not just as myth, but as a symbol that resonates with humanity to this day. In them, we find a lesson that transcends time. From endings come beginnings, from destruction comes creation, and from the smallest remnant, the immortal can rise again. Roman obsession with eternity. By the time the Roman Empire reached its full power, the story of the phoenix had traveled far from its Egyptian birthplace. From the sunlit banks of the Nile to the Mediterranean trade routes, the Bennu bird had transformed in the imagination of travelers, scholars, and poets. The Romans were fascinated not just by the phoenix's fiery spectacle, but by what it symbolized: eternity, the unbroken continuation of life, and the triumph of order over destruction. In a civilization obsessed with legacy, the phoenix became the ultimate metaphor for what Rome aspired to be. The earliest Roman mentions of the phoenix come primarily from naturalists and historians. Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century CE, describes the phoenix as a unique bird, golden and red in color, which lives for 500 years and then burns itself upon a pyre of aromatic substances, only to rise again from its ashes. In Roman society, this bird was more than a marvel, it was a living allegory for the empire's claim to immortality. Rome itself, founded on myth and legend, had an origin story as carefully curated as the phoenix's life cycle. Just as the bird cyclically renewed itself, so too did the Romans believe their city could endure eternally, overcoming the cycles of war, decay, and betrayal. Coins and monuments frequently bore images of the phoenix. Emperors used the bird as propaganda, a visual shorthand for their desire to be remembered beyond death. The image of the phoenix was particularly potent under emperors who sought to reassure their people of continuity amidst political turmoil. For example, when an emperor faced military defeat, plague, or political strife, the phoenix could serve as a subtle reminder that, like the Firebird, Rome would rise again. But the Roman obsession with the phoenix was not just political, it was spiritual. Romans, much like the Greeks before them, associated the phoenix with the sun. Helios, the Greek sun god, had a Roman counterpart in Sol. The phoenix, often depicted rising in flames, symbolized the daily triumph of light over darkness, life over chaos. In Roman philosophy, particularly among Stoics and writers influenced by Hellenic thought, the phoenix also came to represent the cyclical nature of time and the renewal of the soul. Life, death, and rebirth were not just cosmic events, they were moral lessons. Humanity could endure if it followed the patterns of the universe, just as the phoenix endured its cycles of destruction and renewal. Romans also projected the phoenix into their funerary practices. Wealthy families commissioned mosaics, frescoes, and tomb decorations depicting the Firebird as a guide for the soul in the afterlife. In these depictions, the phoenix was often shown perched upon a pyre, wings unfurled, looking eastward toward the rising sun. The symbolism was clear: death was not the end. Just as the phoenix rose from its ashes, so too could the human soul hope for eternal renewal. Some scholars even suggest that funerary imagery of the phoenix was connected to the cult of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, which became increasingly influential in late imperial Rome. Here, the phoenix represented not only personal immortality but the enduring power of cosmic and imperial order. Despite this widespread admiration, the phoenix remained fundamentally otherworldly to Roman audiences. It was not a bird to be tamed or hunted. There was only ever one, and it appeared at long, unpredictable intervals. This rarity enhanced its mystique. For Romans, the phoenix was a mirror to their aspirations, not a literal creature they expected to see. Its uniqueness became a tool for teaching lessons about governance, morality, and the fleeting nature of human life. The bird's fire was both a warning and a promise: destruction is inevitable, but so is renewal. Interestingly, Roman fascination with the phoenix also intersected with early Christian thought. By the 3rd century CE, Christian writers such as Clement of Rome referenced the phoenix as a symbol of resurrection. They appropriated the imagery of a singular, immortal bird rising from ashes to illustrate Christ's triumph over death. The Roman audience was already primed to understand the phoenix in these terms. It was a familiar icon of endurance, continuity, and divine favor. In this way, the bird became a bridge between pagan belief and emerging Christian theology, a testament to its adaptability and enduring appeal. Yet the phoenix was not merely a symbol of hope, it was a reminder of imperial fragility. Rome itself, as Pliny and other historians would note, was subject to the same cycles of rise, peak, and decline that governed all things. The phoenix was a comforting allegory precisely because it acknowledged destruction. The empire could fall, cities could burn, and leaders could perish, but as long as the ideals Rome cherished were preserved, renewal was always possible. The bird's ashes were a metaphor for memory, for the lessons of the past carried forward into the future. Roman authors were also fascinated by the phoenix's geographic exoticism. Supposedly native to Arabia, Ethiopia, or lands even more distant, the bird became a symbol of Rome's reach and curiosity. By claiming knowledge of such a rare and distant creature, Romans demonstrated their intellectual and imperial dominance. They catalogued it alongside other marvels of nature, blending observation with legend, creating a narrative that fused scientific curiosity, political propaganda, and philosophical reflection. By the late imperial period, the phoenix had become fully entrenched as a symbol of eternity, a bird whose life cycle mirrored the dreams of a civilization obsessed with legacy. Its story appeared in mosaics, coins, literature, and eventually Christian texts, surviving long after the political structures that celebrated it had crumbled. It reminded the Romans, and continues to remind us, that true immortality lies not in resisting death, but in enduring its lessons, carrying the past into the future, and rising anew. In the Roman imagination, then, the phoenix was more than a firebird. It was a mirror of civilization itself, glorious, radiant, and fleeting, yet eternally reborn in spirit. Through the phoenix, the Romans articulated their deepest fears, their loftiest aspirations, and their relentless desire to transcend time. It was, in essence, a warning and a promise: no matter the fire that consumes us, we can rise again, if we remember, endure, and embrace the cycles of life. The phoenix in early Christianity. By the time Christianity emerged as a distinct faith in the first few centuries CE, the phoenix was already a legendary figure known across the Mediterranean world. Its origins in Egyptian mythology as the Bennu bird, a solar and creative force, and its reinterpretation in Greek literature as a solitary, immortal firebird, had ensured that this symbol of rebirth, immortality, and cyclical renewal was familiar to many. Early Christians, searching for ways to explain their beliefs to a world steeped in myth, found in the phoenix a powerful metaphor for resurrection and eternal life. The phoenix's connection to fire and ashes resonated deeply with Christian symbolism. Fire, while destructive, was also purifying, just as sin needed to be cleansed before salvation. Ashes, on the other hand, were a reminder of mortality, humility, and human frailty. In the phoenix, early Christian writers saw the ultimate allegory: death is not the end. From destruction comes new life, and from suffering emerges salvation. Clement of Rome and the Phoenix. One of the earliest Christian references to the phoenix comes from Clement of Rome, writing in the late 1st century CE. In his work, The Letter to the Corinthians, Clement draws on the phoenix to illustrate the resurrection of the human soul. He describes a single bird that lives for centuries, then dies by fire only to rise from its own ashes, renewed and immortal. Clement emphasizes that the phoenix is unique, solitary, and eternal, reflecting the Christian belief that the resurrection is a singular, divine event, one that transcends ordinary mortality. Clement's choice of the phoenix as an allegory was no accident. In a world where Egyptian and Greek mythological knowledge was widespread, his audience would immediately recognize the symbolism. By connecting the familiar myth of the phoenix to Christian theology, Clement could make abstract spiritual concepts, eternal life, resurrection, and divine continuity, more tangible. The phoenix became not just a story, but a teaching tool, a bridge between pagan culture and the emerging Christian worldview. The phoenix as Christological symbol. In addition to representing the resurrection of individual believers, the phoenix came to symbolize Christ himself. Like the phoenix, Christ faced death but rose victorious, offering eternal life to humanity. Early Christian writers highlighted the parallels: both undergo a transformative death by fire, whether literal or metaphorical, and both emerge in a perfected, immortal state. The phoenix, therefore, was more than a metaphor for human resurrection, it was a prefiguration of Christ's triumph over death. Church fathers like Origen and Tertullian elaborated on this symbolism. They wrote of the phoenix not just as a curiosity from pagan myth, but as an affirmation of the natural world's ability to foreshadow divine truth. In the phoenix, creation itself seemed to point toward God's plan for humanity, demonstrating that death is never final and that life, true, eternal life, awaits those who follow the divine path. From myth to moral lesson. Early Christian texts often emphasized the moral and spiritual lessons embedded in the phoenix myth. Its long life could represent patience, endurance, and faithfulness. Its fiery death illustrated the purifying trials one must endure to reach salvation. Its rebirth from ashes reminded believers that suffering is temporary and that perseverance and faith can yield renewal and eternal reward. One striking example comes from Eusebius of Caesarea, a 4th century historian of the early church. Eusebius describes the phoenix in his church history, not as a mythical creature to marvel at, but as a didactic emblem. He draws parallels between the bird's self-sacrificial death and Christ's crucifixion, encouraging Christians to view their own struggles and mortal hardships as steps towards spiritual resurrection. The Phoenix's legend thus transformed from a story of wonder into a lesson in hope, resilience, and divine providence. Symbolism in Christian art and literature. The Phoenix also began appearing in early Christian art, mosaics, and literature. While it never achieved the prominence of the cross or the fish, it was sometimes depicted in catacombs and tombs, especially in regions influenced by Egyptian and Greek traditions. The imagery was straightforward, a radiant bird rising from flames or ashes, often placed alongside symbols of the sun, eternity, or resurrection. These visual representations reinforced the bird's allegorical role, linking it directly to the promise of life after death. In literature, Christian authors like Cyril of Jerusalem used the phoenix to explain resurrection during sermons. Its cyclical life-death-rebirth pattern mirrored the teachings of the Church. The faithful, though subject to mortality, could rise anew, cleansed and glorified, in the presence of God. The bird became a story of hope, capable of crossing cultural boundaries and resonating with people steeped in pagan traditions yet curious about Christian beliefs. The phoenix as a bridge between cultures. Perhaps the phoenix's greatest role in early Christianity was as a cultural bridge. By embracing a familiar myth and reinterpreting it through the lens of Christian doctrine, early writers could communicate complex spiritual truths to audiences already acquainted with Egyptian, Greek, and Roman myths. The phoenix reassured believers that Christianity was not a sudden rupture from the past, but a continuation and fulfillment of ancient wisdom. Its story demonstrated that divine truth could be recognized even in the myths of other cultures, and that resurrection and eternal life were not foreign concepts, they were part of the universal imagination. Legacy in Christian thought. By the end of the 4th century, the phoenix had become a recurring symbol of resurrection in Christian thought, though its prominence declined with the rise of more formalized iconography. Nevertheless, its influence persisted in medieval bestiaries, theological texts, and liturgical metaphors, often appearing alongside other allegorical creatures to illustrate spiritual truths. The phoenix reminded believers that life is cyclical, death is temporary, and divine providence ensures renewal. In this way, the phoenix exemplified the transformative power of myth. A creature once tied to pagan sun worship and Egyptian cosmology became a vessel for Christian teachings on hope, resurrection, and eternal life. It survived not as a relic of the past, but as a living symbol that transcended time, culture, and religious boundaries. In early Christianity, the phoenix was more than a mythological curiosity, it was a profound symbol of resurrection, divine promise, and moral instruction. From Clement of Rome to Eusebius of Caesarea, the immortal Firebird illustrated the eternal cycle of death and rebirth, connecting human experience with divine truth. Alchemy and the inner phoenix. By the time the phoenix had traveled from the deserts of Egypt to the minds of Greek philosophers, it was no longer merely a bird of flame. It had become a mirror to the human soul. Long before psychologists and spiritual teachers spoke of transformation, alchemists, the mystics of the medieval and Renaissance world, recognized the phoenix as a living symbol of inner rebirth. In their eyes, it was not a literal bird of fire, but a guide for the human spirit through the alchemical process of purification, destruction, and renewal. Alchemy is often mischaracterized as the simple pursuit of turning lead into gold. Yet true alchemy was far deeper, a spiritual science. It was the study of the transmutation of the self, where base materials symbolized the impurities, fears, and limitations within a person, and gold represented a state of perfected being. In this context, the phoenix's story resonated perfectly. To be reborn, one had to first endure the fire of transformation, surrendering the old self to be consumed, so that the new self might arise from the ashes. Alchemists often divided this inner process into stages, each corresponding to a metaphorical transformation of matter, and, by extension, the soul. The first stage was nigredo, the blackening. Just as the phoenix's nest must burn to ash, the initiate faced the darkest aspects of themselves: doubt, fear, pride, and despair. Nigredo was a confrontation with mortality, loss, and decay, a psychological death. Alchemists did not fear this stage. They understood it as necessary purification. Like the phoenix perched upon its sacred nest, one had to willingly enter the fire, trusting that destruction was not annihilation, but preparation. The second stage, albedo, or whitening, followed. After the ashes of the old self settled, clarity emerged. The initiate, having faced their shadows, began to perceive truth more clearly. It was a time of insight, of awakening to patterns previously unseen. In this stage, the phoenix metaphor transformed from a story of external flames to a vision of internal illumination. The bird's rising from its ashes was no longer simply a spectacle, it became a symbol of emerging consciousness, a reminder that light often emerges only after darkness is endured. The third stage, citronitas, the yellowing, represented the dawning of wisdom. Here, the initiate integrated the lessons of the ashes. Just as the phoenix's flames were fueled by sacred incense and resin, the alchemist fed their inner fire with reflection, discipline, and knowledge. The yellow glow symbolized illumination of mind and spirit, preparing the alchemist for the final stage, rubedo, or reddening, the ultimate rebirth. It was the stage of mastery, where the ashes of the old self gave rise to a fully integrated, enlightened being. In the phoenix metaphor, this was the moment the bird rose in blazing glory, unbound and eternal. What is remarkable is how universal this metaphor became. In manuscripts from Hermetic traditions, the phoenix was often depicted alongside Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail, and the philosopher's stone, the ultimate emblem of completion. These images were not merely decorative. They reminded initiates that transformation was cyclical, the end of one life, one habit, one limitation, was the beginning of the next. Just as the phoenix cannot escape its own cycle of death and rebirth, humans could not escape the inevitability of change. Yet, as the bird showed, this inevitability was not to be feared, it could be embraced as a path to immortality of the soul. Alchemical writers also emphasized the phoenix's singularity. Unlike mythical creatures that multiplied, hunted, or reproduced, the phoenix was alone. This solitude mirrored the inner work of the initiate. Transformation is not achieved through mimicry, imitation, or dependence on others. It is deeply personal, an inner alchemy that each soul must perform for itself. Every individual carries their own ashes, their own fire, and their own potential for rebirth. The phoenix became a guide for this solitary journey, a symbol that true renewal is self-created. In Renaissance Europe, alchemists such as Paracelsus and later mystical thinkers began to blend this imagery with Christian and Hermetic symbolism. The phoenix, once a creature of pagan myth, became an emblem of spiritual resurrection and divine favor. Some texts explicitly compared the phoenix to Christ, both rising from death to illuminate the world with renewed life. Others used it more subtly, as a metaphor for the spiritual artist who must first destroy the ego before the spirit can ascend. Whether approached as a religious allegory or a psychological guide, the message remained consistent: rebirth requires fire, ashes, and surrender. Even the materials associated with the phoenix's nest, myrrh, frankincense, and sacred woods, took on inner symbolic meaning in alchemy. They were no longer merely offerings to gods, they represented the tools of transformation, meditation, ritual, and disciplined practice. The fire itself was no longer literal but symbolic of the inner crucible, the intense heat of self-confrontation and purification. Only through these trials could the soul rise renewed, shining with the brilliance of eternal wisdom, just as the phoenix emerges in a blaze of gold and crimson. By the time the alchemists had passed their manuscripts to future generations, the phoenix had become something more than a myth or a bird. It had become a psychological and spiritual archetype, a blueprint for human transformation. The flames of the phoenix were within each person, waiting for the moment when one could let go of fear, confront mortality, and embrace the fire that purifies and renews. In this sense, the phoenix is not just older than empires, older than the written word, it is older than the human psyche's fear of death itself. It is timeless because the need for transformation is timeless. The inner phoenix reminds us that destruction is not defeat. Ashes are not emptiness. Fire is not an enemy, but a teacher. When humans embrace this alchemical truth, they step into the same cycle that the immortal Firebird has traversed for millennia. They learn that endings are temporary, that darkness is a necessary prelude to illumination, and that every life, no matter how battered, can rise anew. In the alchemical imagination, the phoenix is not just reborn, it teaches humans to be their own source of rebirth. As the phoenix turns to ash once more, its story reminds us that endings are never truly final. From the sacred fires of ancient Egypt's Bennu to the blazing legends of Greek mythology, the immortal Firebird has endured because it reflects something eternal within us, the power to rise after collapse. Empires fell, gods faded, yet the phoenix still burns in our stories, symbols, and struggles. Every rebirth begins with fire, and every flame leaves a choice. Thank you for watching. If this legend ignited your curiosity, like, subscribe, and join us as we uncover more myths that refuse to die.